I have a good friend of mine who, more than anyone I know, exemplifies Jesus' personality. He never does anything from selfish motives. He is constantly thinking of others. He's cool under pressure, kind to everyone, but he also mourns over the sins of people. My friend is a preacher after all, and I love him dearly because he so exemplifies Jesus. But the fact is, my friend is imperfect. He's a sinner. He sometimes does act selfishly. He doesn't always keep his cool. Sometimes he doubts when he shouldn't, because bad things happen to him and his family. And at times in his life, he has struggled with bouts of discouragement. Jesus got angry, but he never sinned. Jesus loved people, but not the sin. Jesus always acted out of selflessness. He never did anything that benefited him only. And yet, he is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He was the descendant of King David, which means he had royal blood coursing through his veins. He is all-powerful and can do anything, but he didn't. Instead of being served, he served others. He was forgiving of those who hurt him more than you or I will ever experience. Do you remember what Jesus said while looking down from the cross at those who were responsible for his cruel crucifixion? "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Jesus was the ultimate example of someone who knew how to forgive others, who knew how to be the greatest person who ever lived. His words changed the course of civilization. Think about it. Hospitals have been built in the name of the Good Samaritan, a parable Jesus told one time to someone who asked about showing mercy to others. Outside the Gospels, Jesus dominates the pages of the letters and the book of Revelation too. Our study will be on the Gospels, but remember some of the beautiful words penned by the Apostle Paul describing Jesus as our example in suffering. Peter also said that Jesus is the ultimate example in everything, especially in suffering. Or John's description of Jesus, describing him in his glorified state in Revelation chapter 1. There's one passage in the Gospels that especially comes to mind when I think of Jesus' greatness while here on the earth. It's the Transfiguration. He was praying on a mountain when suddenly he became incredibly bright. His clothes were illuminated with intense light. And then two pillars of the Old Testament, two men, Moses and Elijah, stood talking with him. Now, three of his apostles were there with him, Peter, James, and John. Do you remember what their reaction was? They were terrified. Here's Jesus talking with these two great prophets of God from centuries past, and they're hovering in fear. Do you remember the voice of God himself emerging from the sky? "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." And then, after the whole scene faded away and the scared apostles were still hiding their faces, Jesus came over to them, gently placed his hand on them, and comforted them. That's the same Jesus who, even now, sees you and knows you by name. He's our friend who did everything in his power to make salvation possible. And through the pages of the Gospels, we come face to face with Jesus the Nazarene, the greatest man who ever lived. You remember Nathanael, who was approached by his friend Philip, who told him, "We have found the Messiah. He's from Nazareth?" Nathanael said, "Really? Can anything good come from Nazareth?" I love Philip's response. Come and see. Come with me over these next several lessons. Together, we will stand in awe of Jesus the Nazarene.